Okay, good morning, everyone. So we decided to start a few minutes later to give people a chance to get here, but not everyone's here yet, but I think it's time to start. So first up, I removed the activation. I think some people were struggling with the activation, so I just took the activation down so you can just go ahead and log in using those credentials you used to register, right? So you can just try out on the site and see that that's working. We won't need it just yet, so please be patient for that. Maybe in the afternoon, raise that, and we'll see if you're still having issues with that. On the website, we've also uploaded, so you'll find this new tab here, the course materials, and you'll find the presentation slides from yesterday over there. And you'll also find at the bottom here, there'll be lecture videos. So because we'll be doing a bit of coding this morning, we'll record those videos and you'll be able to access them through this page also. Okay, so dealing with data, that's the topic of this morning. And this means that in addition to the analysis and so on, so many of you mentioned the analysis on the first day. Today's session is more about getting the data to and uploaded somewhere to a website so that you can start performing analysis. And it's also a bit of an introduction to developing code and creating interfaces to your data so that other people can access it. So just about interfaces, an interface, as we mentioned yesterday, can change behavior and the interest of the users of maybe not of a computing system, but of some organization. So you can change the behavior of people in an organization with a well-designed interface. So for instance, here, this is showing some screens where we are tracking the accreditation status of students. So in engineering, we are accredited by the Engineering Council of South Africa, and they spell out these criteria, these so-called exit level outcomes for our students. And in previous years, students had no interest in that really. They didn't know what the exit level outcomes even were. And that was a constant complaint from the accreditation bodies that how can you claim to be accredited with us when your students don't even know what these criteria are. And when we implemented a system that would automatically read those criteria, those exit level outcome criteria, and map the students' records against those, and we provided an interface for students to review where they were in terms of their compliance with the accreditation, then suddenly all students knew all 10 exit level outcomes and they could recite them and the accreditation body was happy and all those good things. And so if you look at the interface, it sort of tells you why they knew it so well, right? If you've got this nice green mark against that criterion and something that's telling you why you are compliant there. So here you can see the student has achieved this mark in this course, and so he's attained that exit level outcome. Then, of course, that student will remember that that's the ELO that I've attained, or there's this other ELO that I haven't attained. That's probably the one that will be of greatest interest. And of course, if there was some slight issue with why that student hadn't attained that, then they'd be banging down your door to know, there's an error in this mark and this needs to be changed. So it changes the level of interest in particular things. It changes the level of activity, and you can redirect the energy that people are putting into things with simple interface design like that. So that's why we'll spend a bit of time on this topic in this morning's session. This is another example of this kind of system where it's reviewing a student's results, a student's academic record, and it's working out the registration advice for that student. So, for instance, it's recommending here that the student can take these courses but not these courses. And it's also giving the reason why. So in these decision trees, right? It's you could say it's an extension of expert systems. In a decision tree, if you have your criteria spelled out and you are mapping someone's records against criteria, then you will know why you are classifying someone with a certain status. Like here, we are classifying yes or no in terms of registering for a course. So if you have the criteria, you can also then work out why you've got that status. So the criterion says you haven't passed those courses, therefore you can't register. So in addition to telling someone what they should do, you can also tell them why you think they should do that. So that's another important aspect of these expert systems and decision trees. Yeah, so it looks a lot like AI, but these are really simple things to do. I should also point out here that in this academic program, the system had worked out that this course was equivalent to the course that the student was supposed to do. So the student was supposed to do a course on numerical methods, and the system worked out that that would result in a timetable clash for that student. So it recommended that you take this course instead. And the convener for that course contacted me. Why do I suddenly have all these students in this in my course? Because normally that course putters along with 5 to 10 people. Suddenly there were 30 or 40 people registering for that course. And that's because there were many students in this position, and they hadn't known before that you could take this equivalent course and so overcredit it and finish in a shorter period of time. So it was much more efficient. It actually led to throughput. So there are often positive consequences, unintended positive consequences from using systems like that. So those are examples of things where the user is quite interested in what that result is telling them. There are other interfaces where perhaps the person is not as invested in that data, and then it becomes more difficult for them to engage with it. So that's the balance you have to strike. You have to look at what type of user am I getting, what are the interests of this user, and what's the data I'm going to be presenting them with. So this is data that's quite interesting to me because it shows how the distribution of residence times of students, what the residence time distribution is of students. So as mentioned yesterday, residence time, how long is somebody staying in some space? So in this case, the space is the academic program. So this is showing that we have some long service candidates in this program, 22 registrations, so that's 22 semesters for this student and so on. And so you can generate a distribution of age in that academic program. So that's in semesters, that's in years. And so you can see that this program has a long tail here. So the ideal profile is that all students will enter, let's say 100 students enter, so you'll have 100 in first year, all will pass, and there'll be 100 in second year, and there'll be 100 in third year. So at steady state, you'll get 100 students, so you'll get a flat line, and then ideally it will drop to 0 for year 5 because everyone's graduated by then, and so on. Whereas you actually get data that looks more like this, where you get recycled. So it might be that in the first year, just after the first year in the third semester, there's a high failure rate. So you get many students coming back and being held up in first year. So you get that spike there. So 140 students, even though you took in 100, and then you get dips in particular places. So a distribution function like this can help you understand where those difficult points are in the program. Also in administration and just giving information to staff and students. Again, the color is a bit too subtle for this projector, but here, this is some data from an exercise that we used to do in a particular department where is to review all the students at the end of each semester. We would review every single student and their progression. So how have they done in this semester? How have they done in the previous semesters? So if they had applied for concessions and so on, we would, so concessions to take courses that they didn't meet the criteria for, then we could take all that into account and make a decision. So it would normally be a two-day exercise. So the all staff, right? There were 21 of us, and we would all sit for 2 days and do this exercise. And of course, part of the frustrating parts of this exercise is you'll get perhaps a straight through student like this, someone with no issues and really nothing to talk about in terms of the student's record. And the staff would be, oh, do you know, her mother has this business, or and then she has a nice dog and things like that. So it's you can really focus people's attention on the things that they need to talk about through interfaces like this. So, for instance, what we really needed to talk about were students in this range, 48%, 49%. So if you want to focus people in on that, you can use this kind of highlighting in your interfaces. And we found after a while, what I had hoped to happen happened, which is people started saying, well, look, we should just skip to those yellow blocks, right, and just talk about those students. And so what used to be a 2-day exercise was done in something like 2.5 hours. So that comment that we shouldn't be above doing these simple admin highlighting of data type exercises. So we'll do all the interesting AI and all those things, but sometimes these simple things, just making an interface which highlights the things you need, can actually result in big changes in terms of time saving and driving activity in the right direction. Yeah, it's mentioned here also litigation protection. Maybe it's not labeled correctly, but it does help you avoid issues where you've missed out on seeing something. So although you put 2 days into reviewing all these cases, if you were to do it manually, by day 1.5, you are pretty tired and it's easy to miss. When reading down these columns of data, it's easy to miss this 48%. And so students are becoming increasingly litigious, so you have to look out for things like that. So again, with building these types of systems, it can and setting it up to require you to give a decision on something, you can help avoid things like that. So we'll be talking about this particular framework, dataview Blue. That's a system that I wrote, which is intended for this course, which because it simplifies many things in terms of the data, massaging of data, and creating of user interfaces, and so on. So we'll work through those 3 exercises. So you were asked to install all those bits of software, and that's all intended to help us develop a coding workflow. So it is important when starting up any kind of coding work to get into a workflow, which means that you don't want to be fiddling around and trying to get this component to talk to that other thing when you actually want a dedicated mind space to develop your code, right? You want the workflow that will help you progress quickly and find issues and sort them out quickly and on the fly. So we'll talk about those different elements like Dropbox and Sublime Text and so on. Maybe just to start with this little clip on coding. Oh, sorry. Okay, I think that you get the point there, right? So in this course, we will be covering this framework as I mentioned. So you will have to write some functions. A lot of it will be about modifying templates that exist there. But hopefully you are encouraged through this to engage with coding because really coding is about structuring your own thoughts. It's about developing, what happens along the way is that your mind becomes developed because in coding, you are basically instructing something that's completely stupid, right? A computer, which takes you absolutely literally, right? So you are training something that takes you, at 100%, what's the right word? Literality takes you very literally, and you have to then structure your mind such that you can instruct this very literal thing to do what you want it to do. So in that process, you develop all these abilities to restructure your own way of thinking, and you'll find that there are these new styles of coding which actually develop these styles of thinking in new ways, in ways that we really couldn't imagine even 10 years ago. Further to developing your workflow when coding, you don't want to touch the mouse, right? You want to be able to code with just well, I wouldn't say with your fingers. It's more, it should be your mind. You can almost see your mind in the code there. So you want to reach the stage where you aren't really thinking about the interface, and the mouse really breaks that coding flow. So what we want to do is develop all these shortcuts also. So keyboard shortcuts are important, alt tabbing among things. It's surprising that some people still don't know about Control C, X, and V. Also control page up and page down to switch between different parts of your code. So we'll look at all that. Also, you should know the shortcut for your compiler. So when you want to run your program, you shouldn't go and hunt and click run. You figure out what that shortcut is, and it should be, okay, I corrected something and I ran it, right? It should just be like that. Also, in terms of writing code, you always want to maintain backups of what you do. But at the same time, that's another thing that can cause a serious break in your flow. So if you're deeply into coding something difficult, it's very difficult to take time out to go and back up what you've done. So Dropbox is great for that. So if you've all installed it, you'll find that, sorry, I need to switch screens here. Right, you should write all your code in Dropbox only. In fact, I only work in Dropbox now. The rest of my hard drive is really for, I barely touch the rest of my hard drive. All my work is in Dropbox because I know that there are multiple copies of all my work across all my computers, and there's a copy in the cloud as well. So that allows me to, for instance, write code here in my office, and then if I go home, I can turn on my PC there, and I can just continue writing code over there. So Dropbox is good for that. It's also good for creating a free website, right? You can actually create a website through Dropbox, as we'll see a bit later, and you'll be able to send an email to someone saying, here's a link to my site, and they can run your site without you having to email them any code or anything like that. So we'll look at that a bit later. So Sublime Text is a useful editor because it provides you with the syntax highlighting and indenting of your code. So if you take some of this code as an example, you can see it's highlighting in different colors, different elements in this code. So for instance, in white, we've got names of classes, and then reserved words highlighted in this magenta, and strings are in that yellow, and so on. So the color helps you find elements of your code quickly. And then also in terms of the, let's just find a place to do this. In terms of indenting of work, you can, if you just hit the curly brackets key and you press enter there, it puts you in the right places to start writing code. So that's what code editors help you to do. So Sublime Text is one of the more popular ones. So we'll be working in JavaScript mainly. And that's because JavaScript is really ubiquitous, right? Every web page has a JavaScript option within it, right? So there can be code in any web page, which means that if you develop some code, your user doesn't have to go and install anything. They just need to go to the website, and they'll be able to run it. Now, an issue with JavaScript is that it is, like the name says, it's a scripted language. It's not a compiled language. So in a scripted language, you've got a compiler that will have to parse the text. So P-A-R-S-E, parse. So that means it has to read the text. So it treats text as a script. It reads it line by line and executes that. I'm oversimplifying there. But it executes a script as something that it's reading. Like you read a script, it's reading the script and executing the code. That's different to a compiled language, which reads the code, then translates it to machine code, and then stores that machine code in a compiled code set, which then runs directly on the processor. So that's much faster if you can pre-compile code and have that running. So it's a scripted language, but there does exist now a compiler for JavaScript. And there exists this thing, Node.js, which lets you run JavaScript code as if it's compiled code. So that's overcome the chief disadvantage of JavaScript. And now, because of the ubiquity of JavaScript, it's been said that if anything is written, if any code is written, it will eventually be written in JavaScript. So everything is slowly being translated to JavaScript. And then, like we say, this will be an introduction to JavaScript, but it will largely happen through template modification because, of course, in a few days course, really, we're not expecting you to be able to do sophisticated programming. But let's see how far we get. So I think we're looking at now. Okay, so the hello world exercise, that's something that all programmers start with. So here's the script for hello world. So I'll just take you through what's behind a web page. Sorry, again, what's the page? Okay, so this is the code behind a web page, and we need to understand the elements of any web document. So even though a web page may be extremely simple, so let's run this code. So you see that's all that we have as the result, right? This little line up here saying hello world. And if we look at the document behind that, you see there are a couple of things going on. First, you have these angle bracket tags here, so that declares the type of document that this is. So it declares that it's an HTML document, and well, in fact, that's redundant there. And then you've got a header block, a head block. So you see you've got an opening tag here that says head, and then down here you've got a closing tag. So this is the hypertext markup language. So it's labeled as a language. It's not really a language. It's more like a document format. It's a set of instructions that just tells you how to make a web page, right? By that I mean it tells the server how to serve a web page. So you have a head part and a body part. So in the head of your document, you will load things into memory. You may set some metadata about the page, so the title of the page and so on. So in the head part, you basically prepare that document for the server to provide it to the user in a particular way. And then in the body part, you actually create the elements for that page. So here you again see this opening of a tag. So you can see body here has been opened. And then here we are providing a parameter to that body. So this is actually just setting the background color of the body of that web page. And we're closing off the body here. And you can see there's some code in between. So we can look at some of these elements and how it's affected things. If you look in the head part, you can see within the head part, we've opened up this title tag, and there it's closed again. And we are given the title of this page here. So you can see here in the title of this web page, we've got some text there, which is the same text as what we've got in there. So that's setting the title, and you do that in the head part of the page. And then in the body here, we are doing some simple things. So we are centering this div element. So I guess it means division, or a div element. So the div elements are where you these are basically the containers on your page, and you can put things into those containers. So it's quite a versatile unit. You can position it in different places. You can set attributes like the background colors and the foreground color and all that sort of stuff. And in this case, it's just creating this this tag router. It's you can see hello world is not in this div tag over here. So when the page first loads, it doesn't contain that hello world instruction. It just contains a page with an empty container. And then what we have here in the header is the code for serving that hello instruction. So hello world is here. So hypertext markup language, although that's really the language of all web pages, I try and get away from it as quickly as possible. So what I do is I create this blank document with a container, and then I just populate that container from my actual code. So the actual JavaScript is here. So if you look at this side of it, you can see script type is JavaScript. So here we are declaring that we want to introduce some JavaScript into this page. And you see here it's saying source jQuery. So that instruction is loading JavaScript, which is stored in this JS file, jQuery-2.1.3 min. So online, so there's a place on a website, you can see there nano blue /autobase and all of that. So this is the web address for this JavaScript file. So this instruction is basically going to go to this website, download this JavaScript file, and then serve that into this page. So it's going to inject this JavaScript into the current page. So jQuery is a popular library that helps us use JavaScript better. And then there are other instructions here. There's a utilities.js. So that's some code that I wrote, which makes it easier to do certain things on with your JavaScript. And there are some other files here. So this one in particular helps you load databases and interface with databases. And this one helps you control the document that you're working with. So there are all these libraries that can do various things. And you could say, well, many of these things are not really needed because all I want to do is write hello world on the page, right? So of course you can chop out some of this code. You can say, you know, I don't actually need to go and load code that's going to interface with databases when I just want to write hello world on the page, right? So you can customize how much JavaScript is injected into the page, and you can write JavaScript directly into the page as well. So instead of specifying a source file here, you can see this src equals this. Right, so this will, as we mentioned, load up a JavaScript, an external JavaScript file. So if instead of looking for that source, you just open up the JavaScript tag and close it, then whatever you type in between those will be your JavaScript that will run on this page. So on this page, it's creating a new document, this autodoc, and it's setting some parameters in here. And then it runs this callback function. So callback is the function that you are going to work in. So in all those templates, you'll find that you have all this peripheral stuff going on, the other JavaScript being loaded into the page and so on. So you want to look for that callback function. That will contain the JavaScript that you'll be writing for whatever the task is. So here you can see something that looks a bit more like code. Right, so this other stuff with the tags and opening and closing and all that, you know, anyone who likes coding will tell you that's a really messy thing to cope with, and you can only do so much with that style of document control. So we want to write code that looks more like this. So here it's saying doc. So we've created this thing doc, and then we are referring to doc, and there's a method within doc called create UI, so create user interface. And then we just give it a name so we can tag it in memory. And then we're saying here add, and then we're giving a name to something, and then a type, and then the content. So that's the general format, you can say. we provide it with an ID slug, a type, and the content. So, I didn't mention, if you use the double slash, that means write a comment. So you can write comments into your code, which the compiler will ignore. It won't execute that. So generally speaking, we'll be developing our systems by providing these, you can say these elements, by adding elements into different parts of the page. So here we are adding a div element, so AUE div. So the second argument is a kind of reserved word, right? It tells you the type of thing you are creating. So AUE is a general, you can think of it as a kind of surname. Well, it's a forename, but anyway. So AUE, all user interface elements are called AUEs. So AUE div, it means there's an auto document version of the div, right? So that's the type we are providing there. And then before we provide the type, we have to provide a label for that. So that's arbitrary. We can choose the name of that element. So we're just calling it head1. And then the content here. So for this content, we're specifying that it's a text string which says hello world. And that will create in memory a space with this particular element, this AUE div element, with an attribute of text, which is hello world. So that's just sitting in memory, and then here is the instruction that causes that to appear on the screen. So we refer to this hello object here. So we've created this hello object, and so we refer to it by calling on the document object and then calling on UE sequence. So UE seq says find the user interface element called hello. So there's hello, and so it picks up, okay, there's this object, and now render it, right? Draw it on the screen. So when we run render, render will look inside of this and find that there is one element inside of this hello thing. It will find head1, which it notes is a div tag. So it knows draw a div tag, and in that div tag put this text, hello world. And so that's basically how we're going to be doing things. We'll be adding all these elements into these UE, you can think of them as folders maybe. And then you'll be asking those folders to render their contents onto the page. So that's a more structured way of creating your web page rather than using these messy tags. Okay, now I am recording this this video, so if you can, when you are doing these exercises, you can just step back in the video and look for the instructions. Okay, so that's the first one. That's a simple page like this. And then in the second exercise, we want to do something with more interesting elements. Maybe let's just pause there. Any questions or comments so far?
You mentioned stay out of HTML, so you would rather create code in JavaScript and then just... You said you want to stay out of HTML, so you want to rather create your code in JavaScript and then simply pull it from an HTML file.
Right.
The reason for that being?
See, HTML, there is a lot you can do with it today, but it's not a programming language. It's you can think of it as when you create a Word document, a Microsoft Word document. You know, it's like laying out a document like that. You don't really think of writing functions and so on in that Word document. So the HTML side of this is more like that, just laying out a document. Whereas we want to load data from databases. We want to do some processing on that data, and then once that's done, we want to make some change to the page. So those sorts of things are much easier to do with an actual language, with actual code. Maybe it's a bit of a bias also. It's just, you know, when you come from background in coding, then when you look at something like this with all these tags flooding the page, it really looks messy. So you can see also that it's much easier to keep track of this. Well, maybe it looks complicated because there's so much stuff going on here. But if you look at the lines that are actually doing the work there, that's a much simpler set of things than all these tags that are quite hard to see. So you want to be able to read your code and understand the structure of what's going on also. So code like that makes it much easier. Any other questions? Okay, so let's find the code we want to run. Okay, so we're going to look at setting up this this page now, and you can see there are some fairly sophisticated elements on this page. You've got these tabs up here, and within each of these tabs, you've got this kind of accordion style of a thing, and you also have a table of data appearing down here. And you'll see we can do all of that with the same idea. So of course there'll be a fair amount of code that follows, but you'll find the same pattern that you create a user interface element and you add various various other elements to that. So looking at the code for this page, you can see here we are creating that same element, hello, and we are adding this div tag. So that just creates the container for us. And then we add to that container this title, which says, welcome to my first research app. And if we look on the page, you can see that's the first thing on the top there. If you're able to follow in your mind where these things fit, right? You're kind of constructing a tree in your mind of different things and how they are fitting into each other. And you can see that this is already occurring inside of some bounding element here. It's already inside of some box here. So where did that box come from? And that box was actually this here. It says here main contain. Let's just switch. Okay, better. Okay. Okay, so that box where we are writing in the title is defined here. So you can see this div tag, it has all these attributes. So this is what's called cascading style sheet formatting. So a cascading style sheet, CSS, allows you to create these styles on your page. So you can set borders and margins and text styles and all of those things. So that's a topic in its own right. So you can you can look in these templates for some of the commonly used ones, but of course that's a topic in its own right. So just you can see here setting some padding, and we are setting the background color, a border color. We are looking for a shadow on that box, and so on. These things are colors, right? When you see this right border color, and then you've got that hashtag, and then that's a hexadecimal number. So it goes from it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then A, B, C, D, E, F. So that's a hexadecimal number, and these are actually 3 hexadecimal numbers. So AAA means for RGB, red, green, blue, use the value A. Don't use the maximum value of F. And so that's just drawing that border over there. So it's giving us this light gray. If we had set that that AAA to 000, then we'd get a different result, right? Then we'd get a dark black border over there. So you see changing, that's just changing a color. So we won't spend much on the style of things. We'll focus more on the elements and actually the data. So we've got a border and we've got a title of the page, and then there's this other element, tab control. So in tab control, you've got more complex content to it. So we have to provide it with tab data, and in tab data, you provide an ID slug. So you give some name to these different tags, and then you label them. So home page, data view, my account, contact. So if you look at this page, those are the tabs that have been created there, right? Home page, my account, and so on. And so that's created those tags for us, and then we want to create the home page here. So here we are doing this as a separate object. So we are saying, well, we are actually referring to main tags. Now, what's happened here is we've created this thing called hello, and we've added elements to it, right? You can see we've added 3 elements, right? The overall box, and then the title, and then the tab control. And when you do it this way, each time you add an add command, then that's basically sticking statements one onto the other. So the one statement runs, and then the next one runs into that, and so on. So with the result being that the last thing to run will be the output to this operation. So you don't necessarily want output. You just want this to go into memory so that when you tell it to render the page, it will draw all these things. But it does return output. So if you want to catch that element, if you want to say, look, I know I'm going to want to add things into tab control. So you can let that be the last element there, and then you can say, create a variable called main tabs, and then that's going to give you a space where you can attach things. So now down here, we can use that main tabs, and we can add into the home page child of that object. We can add in this div tag that says about my research. So if you go to home page here, we've added in about my research, and it's indented, which kind of implies it's a child of this other object, right? So that's the way to think about these elements. The document object model you can think of as elements with children, which may be other elements, and they can have as many children as they like. So you can think of the ancestry of the page. So you've got this element, which is a child to the home page, and you see if you make another tab active, then that goes away and gives you something else. All right, so that's a box set now. So after adding this my research, we also add a box set. So this box set is really this accordion thing. Right? So the first box in this accordion is this text about the research, and there are other things you can add in here also. Right, so you can look in the template file and see how to modify this and customize what box sets you want to create for your app here. And then if you want to change the content inside one of those box sets, again, you can refer to, you can create a variable that's pointing to that box set. And here we know we've got these ID slugs about, program, and so on. So if you call up that variable and then you say add, and you use the same ID slug as the one you want to serve content into, then you can add that element into that part of the page. So it's all about finding the element and then serving content into the element. That's all we are talking about here. So it might look complicated just because there are so many things in this code, but once you start playing around with it, you see it's fairly easy to do all this stuff. Okay, so there's also a form element we can add here. So we are adding this into data 1. The data frames variable, which is referred to on the data page, you can add this form here. So AUE form is there, and you can specify fields. So ID, slugs, and types. So you can have static text as a type. You can have, if you don't specify a type, it defaults to a text box, and so on. And then you can have buttons on that form also. So go to that form and just have a look at what is rendered, and then compare that with your instruction for creating that element, and you'll be able to see how to modify that. And then here's a useful one, a data table. So if you say here AUE table, and you specify the columns of that table, then well, here the columns are not showing, but we'll sort that out later. But you can specify the columns for that table and then the data in that table. So if that's the data that you have, you can see it's arranged here, and then this is a searchable thing. So if you provide a substring here, it will filter the results for you, and so on. Okay, so that's creating a basic user interface. So I don't want to spend too much time on that, because user interfaces, that's just you can just modify the template, and that's not really the point of the course. So what we want to focus on is making database calls, right? Okay, let's just run this one. So this is a form. This is just showing us that we can now create user interactions here. So if we have this menu set up, so this is another user interface element type. So if you look in exercise 03, you can create these menus using AUE menu. So AUE menu, in the content to that, you specify categories, and you specify items. So here we've got a category main, which is applications, and you've got another category of application types. So you see here we've got applications and application types, and then within each of those broader categories, you've got these items. So within applications, you've got app 1, app 2, app 3. And so here, if you look at this page, you've got app 1, app 2, app 3. And then within application types, you've got type 1 and type 2. So looking here, you've got type 1 and type 2. And then we want to be able to take some action when we click on these things. So for instance, if we choose an app here, we wanted to load that app into this form. So to do that, you further customize the content here. So you say, let's add to the click event that we want to run this object, which is click manager, and we want to run the method menu clicks. So click manager has been created up here. So you can, in JavaScript, you are allowed to create an object which has its own functions within it. So click manager is considered an object here, and within click manager we've got these two functions. You can see menu clicks as this first function and button clicks as a second function. And so when we click on a menu, it's going to fire this function. And if you look inside this function says that form 1 should reset the values in the form, and it should set the app name according to what item has been selected, and it should reset the description according to the type of selected value. So that's all that you need to do to effect some change on the page. So that's how you can connect an event to an action. So an event is that the user goes and clicks something, and then you specify what action to take when that happens. So that's for this part, and then you've also got For the type events, you can add the same, well, that's also just more of the same. For the form, you can also do that. So for the form, you are specifying your buttons here. So you've got create app, update app, remove app. So you can see the buttons are here, and then we are attaching to this create app button. We are creating this, again, it's calling click manager, but now the method it calls is button click. So instead of menu clicks like we had before, it's calling on the method button clicks. And so if you look at what we are doing in button clicks, this is just some code which will output the contents of the form. So PR is a function that will just cause an alert to be given on the screen, which will give you, in this case, we are specifying, give us the values in the form. So if we click on this, you can see those are the values in the form, IDX, app name, short. So if you look at these things here, these are the ID slugs of the form. If you look at the form here, these are the fields of that form, right? IDX, app name, short description, app description, and so on. So although the label is what you see on the screen, in memory, that label has to point to some location in memory. So that location here we are specifying when we give those field tags. So when we click on that, it brings up that in the form, behind those memory locations, you've got these values. Okay, so that's basically how you can get the user interface going. So I know it's a lot, and there's actually a lot of there are many instructions in there. So in that code, there are several instructions that you can really just play around with and customize. So that's why we're going with templates. There's of course no time on the course to go and on a detailed thing about creating user interface elements. So just customize the templates, and we'll try and get to the data quickly. Any questions or comments there? So moving on from there, if you want to create your own site, so let's say you've got this nice user interface going, so you've got yourself ready to serve this this research app somewhere, then all you need to do is first get this Dropbox link. So if you right click on it, right, if you've installed the Dropbox client, when you right click, you'll get this option here, copy Dropbox link. And